So the Alnylam Rare Disease Trend Board, as you noted, is now in its third edition. And this is the first time we're electing to showcase the findings in a conference setting like this. And when I think back historically, around the report, the goal you'll note as well when you look at the content of the report is not so much an aggregation of specific drugs or drug classes. It's really more trying to capture at a higher level to increase transparency in these conversations, just what we see as sort of the prevailing trends specific to the management of rare disease products, and ultimately how that can impact, the market dynamics that payers are facing. So the intent behind the session, and kind of the areas that we're going to highlight from the report in the session, was to take some volunteer payers who've been involved in the process either before or who will be going forward, and allow them to react to some of these top line findings that we're discussing here. And the goal then is to have them in a transparent forum like that, be able to share their individual perspectives, in some cases their organizational perspectives on some of these topics, and really increase overall awareness of the report itself. Because the goal ultimately in this endeavor is to provide this open framework for different manufacturers within the rare disease space to kind of understand the way payers are thinking about it specifically, and hopefully encourage both sides to kind of work together to solve some of the challenges that exist again on both sides. This is we kind of do it in two rounds, right? So we start with a quantitative survey that goes out, and in an anonymized fashion, we aggregate that data and we ask year over year some similar types questions, and beyond. We've kind of expanded that a little bit here. So overall this year, we had a nice mix of commercial Medicare, managed Medicaid participants. Overall, it was a good mix, about 43% of national commercial plans, 39% regional plans, 11% specifically PBMs, and then 7% of the respondents were from a managed Medicare background. So I think, there were really kind of three key findings of the report that I can highlight for you. And to your point, I think some of this is really just trying to quantify feelings that we already have and things that we already know about some of the challenges, but really trying to lay it out there with some numbers with it. The first finding that we pulled out collectively in this report this year, especially compared to the last couple of years, is that we are seeing this incremental increase in focus on rare disease management from the payers that we're surveying. We are noticing general trends as well from the perspective. So there are increasing numbers of sites of care policies that are now targeting rare disease, where maybe perhaps in the past rare disease was maybe spared from some of those policies. And to your point, I think a lot of the drivers that we heard from those that responded, both in the quantitative and qualitative section, were that the high cost of these products and the continued number of new therapies that are coming to market across all of rare diseases is really driving them to look at this a little bit more closely and more specifically than maybe they have in the past. And I think the other big takeaway we saw this year was around uncertainty regarding recent federal legislation and how some of those changes are going to impact payers and the rare disease space specifically. So, of course, a hot topic at meetings that over the past year has been the IRA, and that has broad implications to the pharmaceutical sector, of course, and specifically, therefore, an impact on rare disease products. One of the things we know, looking specifically at orphan drugs, is that there are going to be exemptions from Medicare price negotiations for those therapies that fall into this orphan category. And what we heard from payers in this process is that they're really still unsure how this legislation ultimately is going to drive their internal organizational policies, and how these policies, may perhaps impact the rare disease space beyond the obvious aforementioned. So that's, I think, an area that we heard loud and clear is of interest to the payers that responded, but we weren't quite confident in terms of drawing conclusions as to what changes might really come to fruition from that. And I think we'll look to that for next year as an area of follow-up in the report. Yep. So year over year, we didn't see a whole lot that changed. It's really more, and the way we phrase it in the report, is what has changed, this year, and what do you envision changing in the next 3 to 5 years? So when we open that runway up to the 3 to 5 year period, we're starting to hear from payers that they're thinking about managing, a lot of these products go through buy and bill, right? So they're thinking about how can we better manage and control and predict that cost. And things like utilizing specific mandated SPs was some of the feedback we received in the survey this year. And they see maybe less use of just prior authorizations and maybe more use of trying to utilize and manage these rare products through specific SP networks on their side to avoid some of those buy and bill costs.